Hi everyone, and welcome to another game review by ThinkerThemer. I'm Amy and this is my wonderful fiance Maggie, and together we review games from two different perspectives. I'm all about the mechanics, Maggie's all about the theme. Now, this is an interesting review today because we have put ourselves way out of our comfort zone. We spoke about that in an episode of Small Talk, about the importance of kind of trying the bounds of what you're interested in the hobby, and this certainly pushed us well out of what we're used to. This is a game called Destinies. It's by Lucky Duck Games. They have provided this game for review. It's been designed by Michał Gołębiowski, sorry if I pronounced that wrong, and Filip Miłuński. And this game has at the core of it the technology of what Lucky Duck Games have used for their Chronicles of Crime series. So using an app at the center of the game and the scanning of QR codes to allow you to progress in that game.
Yeah. So in Destinies, we're going to be working our way through a series of scenarios or chapters, essentially, in the lives of a whole range of different characters. And I don't want to go into a lot of spoilers, so I don't really have much more to say
about the theme.
I guess what I will say is that in every one of those stories, we'll be playing characters who have usually two possible destinies, and you are trying to go through the map, uncover different scenarios, and talk to different people, collect things along the way to fulfill your destiny, whatever your destiny might be.
And that's the interesting part about the game, is it's a competitive experience.
Yes.
It's whoever can reach their destiny first. And you have two possible kind of forking paths in your story. So that is really interesting. So what we're showing you here today is not really a spoiler because it's the setup for the first campaign.
Yeah.
So in the box, what you get is a whole host of miniatures.
Yes, a lot of miniatures.
Yeah, they get reused.
Very miniature minis.
Very mini minis, but some bigger minis.
Bigger, yeah.
But some very tiny minis.
Yes.
And they appear as characters throughout the game. They get reused as different characters throughout the campaign, but it's really nice to have that physical kind of bringing that to life. So what we're showing you here is just the first campaign, which is really the getting to know the system. And so we won't go into any further spoilers. But the way that this works is you're going to be using an app. So we've just got it set up here on an iPad. You can probably hopefully see that in our overhead. There's 5 different chapters, of which the first is really just the intro, and then the 4 follow a sequence of events that kind of progresses as a story, even though you play different characters in each part of that story. So you could potentially pick up and play with somebody else. It's not going to really matter. There's just a bit of a thread through the story.
There's
a couple of throwbacks. Exactly.
Minor. It's not essential to gameplay.
So you can see here that we've actually completed all 5, but you can see that it's checking off 2 here. We used a different device for the other 3, but we did play this from start to finish. Now, the app itself is going to set the scene. It's going to tell you a bit of a story, but then it also asks you to pick a character. And the characters, you then find the appropriate character card. It gets added to one of these player boards, and then you're going to be told by the app how to set that character up in terms of its different skill levels in 3 different areas. And all of the characters are going to be slightly different and have slightly different abilities. That is not something that we play with
not at
a
all
lot.
Something we're used to.
Yeah, I mean, we play a lot of Euros and strategy games, and this was very foreign to us. You're also going to have little items that, appear on different locations on the map, and new locations that get revealed as you move into them. And then you're going to come across characters that are going to require you to fight with them, to help them, to
often steal from them,
all different things. And you're going to be playing with these 2 sets of dice that you have. One is I don't know what the name of it is.
I can't remember. Putting me on the spot, but sort of like your core. Let's go to your core die, and then then
kind of like your bonus.
Well, they're the
dice.
ones that you exhaust. So these are like I imagine more like your energy, and this is sort of like your core skill.
So you're always going to roll the 2 white light die, and then you are going to choose whether or not you want to add in these bonus die. And as Maggie said, you're going to be exhausting them and only have few opportunities to kind of every round you get to bring one back, but you've got to save them up if you're trying to do something more difficult. Now, the app is really cool in that it's going to show you on the screen what your locations look like, and as you move into a new space and that gets revealed, it's going to tell you what to put on that new location. So whether that's other characters, things that you can interact with, it's really interesting, and it also tells you which other locations to add to the map, and eventually you're going to build this world as part of each of the campaigns. Along the way, you're also going to be picking up item cards. I won't show you those. We've got a couple here as examples. But when you meet people along the way, they're going to ask, like, could you help me go hunting? And it might allow you to use an item. And you can then scan the QR code that's associated with the card that you have, that's on the card that you have, and that might make your job a little bit easier, or it might be completely useless.
Yeah.
But at least you can try
make
these
them angry,
things.
and because it's irrelevant,
and end your turn.
Or like,
So mechanically, there's not much more probably to say without giving anything away.
Yeah.
But essentially the app is guiding you through, taking the role of, I guess, like a game master.
It's very
dungeon master
it's
type
walking
role.
you through step by step. So it's actually very, very easy, even for people who like us who've never really played a game like this.
And I want to actually, the app provides a lot of ambience because there are a lot of sound effects. So when you go into a tavern, for example, there are tavern sounds, and it just really adds to the game.
Yeah.
And we were reading it out and reading out the different choices. But then sometimes you have secret text that you don't read out loud, especially when you're getting towards fulfilling your quest. One little thing that we made an error on in our first game is that each character card has 2 QR codes, one that relates to each of your secret destinies. And on the back of each card, I won't show it here, but on the back of each card is a bit of a description of the quest that you're on.
Yeah.
And we didn't realize that in the first game.
It's like the description of what are your 2 destinies.
What are your 2 destinies?
So you can kind of
choose which one. But we didn't realize that when we first set up.
Yeah.
And so in the first game, we were actually truly aimlessly wandering around town.
What our destiny was going to be.
Yeah, and discovering. And we actually had a lot of fun with that. So much so that for another one of the campaigns, we actually chose not to look at it until about halfway through. We were like, okay, enough aimless wandering. Let's like find out what our destinies are.
That became like the house rule of like to make, because I think the main reason for this is when we eventually found out what our destinies were, we actually I gasped. I was like, oh yeah, like so it was. I really enjoyed that because it added to that element of like discovery of like no way of like it's sort of like a reveal.
Yeah.
And you still can you stumble a bit, it definitely takes longer if you don't really know what you're after.
Only because you're not listening to the story that the other person, that you were reading out. So once I knew what my destiny was, I was listening to what you were doing to see if I needed to go see that person.
Yeah. It is obviously a lot faster and easier if you do read it up front, because then you know what your choices are, and again, you're still discovering things, but you're not as aimless.
Yeah. And so I want to talk about this game in a bit of detail in terms of how it felt when we played it, because this game started off, it was probably a game that I would not have looked at and we would not have purchased before some of the reviews started coming out, and they were really, really positive. And when that happens and it's something that is outside of our usual realm, I get really bad FOMO. I want to know, why is everyone having so much fun over there? Maybe we should be into co-op games. Maybe we should, whatever it is. I always want to try and see if it can bring us into the other side of the hobby. And so we had an opportunity to review this, and we said, of course, we'd love to. And it really surprised us. I think the first couple of campaigns, we had so much fun with this. It was really addictive.
Yeah, like the story would stay with me, and even though it's not the type of game, because every chapter is sort of its own thing, and then once it's done, it's sort of done. But I did find that, and I think partly it's because you have the atmospheric thing of the app and the sounds, and it was really immersive. And it's very, I thought it was really well written as well, the actual story itself.
It was really
well
written.
You kind of, you're invested in what's happening.
Yeah, and in those first 2 campaigns, or maybe the 3 campaigns, I was just so excited to see what else came out of the location deck, what else came out in terms of items, and even all the way through to the end, we were still like, ooh, what a fun new item that we hadn't seen before. And just getting, the technology was really interesting. Yeah. Even the things that we say we never do, so like rolling dice to see if we win something. It felt like you could kind of mitigate the luck in this game. It felt, although overall it still felt like it was more about the journey probably than trying to win per se. And I guess that brings us to probably how we felt towards the end of the later campaigns, is that the later campaigns, it felt much more like it, because they were on bigger maps or more location
things
tasks.
Really escalate in every sense of the word.
Yeah, they do. And so things are more spread out, which means that someone just by sheer luck of interacting with the right parts of the game could actually get, quite ahead of you. And then it is like quite, oh, well, now I feel like we're just playing this out because I'm so far behind and it's clear that you're going to win. And I felt that more towards the end campaigns. I also think that for us, probably like towards the end, it started to feel a little bit like rinse and repeat.
Yeah, so it kind of felt like it was exactly, well, it is exactly the same game in terms of mechanics and what you're doing, with then just like a new skin of the story on top, which is fine. And again, I think this is partly because like the type of game.
Yeah, and so the story was very fantasy heavy, and so we weren't quite as engaged with the progression of that story across the campaigns.
But I think if that's what you're into, like, it's great because it's like getting another chapter of, you know the mechanics, you're fairly comfortable with it, you are sort of going to be doing roughly similar things overall, but you get a new story, you get a new chapter, you get
because we're not into that, I think that the main draw card here was just experiencing a new way of playing and being, it would be like if we played an RPG with someone who was really experienced with it. That's for me what the app did. It held our hand, it allowed us to explore and get out of our comfort zone without being too like kind of sandboxy. It was still very clear what we had to do. We had a lot of fun. I had so much fun with this game, and I would highly recommend it.
Definitely. And from a components point of view, it's actually like they've done quite a good job at a fairly streamlined game, because there's all the only components. You've got the different sets of like the tiles or sort of cards that you're going to be using to lay out the map, the cards that you're going to be using as your items and things like that, your player board and the dice, and that's it. And so it actually is quite an easy game to set up, and probably the longest takedown or putting away is just because I kind of wanted to put the cards back in order. So it's like that was the longest bit. The rest was actually pretty easy, and so it was really magical in a way to be able to kind of live out all these different little experiences, or like kind of like mini movies, I think, and along the way.
And so it's like really compact, but also it's a really cheap price. And I think, obviously they've recognized that once you play through the 5 campaigns, you're probably not going to play it again, because you know how the story ends and there's only a finite number of characters and things like that. So they've made it really reasonable from a cost perspective. But as soon as we played, I immediately thought of, 2 or 3 friends who I was like, as soon as we finish, I really want to give it to this friend and then that friend. And, and I wanted other people to experience it. And I think that is a sign of a really exciting and different game experience.
There's expansion, so I'm keen to see what the expansion is going to be. Like that, and it's in the app when you launch it. It's got
all of a sudden there was an expansion.
So that's interesting. And so like overall, really really enjoyed this experience. What else?
I think that's it. I think that's it. This game started, behind the 8 ball. It was like, it wasn't going to be what we loved, and we really, really enjoyed it. And I think that just speaks volume as to the power of this. It's also because it was such a nice intro into this style of games. Now, when I look at other games of this similar style that are maybe a little less hand-holdy, I'm a little more excited about them.
You're less scared.
I'm less scared of it.
I'm less scared. It was a nice step by step, take you by the hand, gateway introduction to this genre without, well, and again, because we don't work in this genre, I don't know how like light this might be perceived by other players who love this. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm keen to see, what comes next in terms of other stories and other things.
I should also say we've only played this at 2 players. So we played the entire thing through just together, and it was a really nice 2-player experience. I think with a 3rd player, it would get a little lengthy, waiting for it to come around to your turn again, waiting to, reveal more things. So,
There's also a solo mode. So there's actually 2 different solo modes. So there's a challenger mode where you have usually a limit of number of days, because every time you kind of go through a turn, that's a day in the life of the game. So you have a limited number of days in which to fulfill your destiny. And then there's another mode, I can't remember the name of it, but that's more just the open mode. So there's no time limit. You're kind of just playing to see, like, I think it's called Explorer, because you're kind of playing with no day limit, and just to see how long it takes you to fulfill your destiny and explore everything that there is in there. So I think that it would be, I imagine it's going to be exactly the same story, but it'll give you an option if you don't have someone else to play with, to go through it.
Yeah, but if you do have someone else to play with, it's a really nice competitive story-driven experience, which is, I think, quite rare. Usually they're cooperative, and it's, if you usually play different types of games, give this a go.
Definitely,
I just think it's so interesting and different, and who knows, could open up a whole new world of board games for you. But that is our review of Destinies. If you like this review, please hit like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we'll be back with more board game reviews soon. But bye for now. Bye.